In the first scene, a woman named Chase wakes up on an unknown island with a shell in her hand. She doesn't remember anything, including her identity, and is puzzled how she ended up there. Shortly after, we get to know that there are 9 other people stranded on the island with her. All of them are dressed in similar clothes and have no recollection of who they are. Chase first meets a woman named Casey, who reveals that she woke up with a knife. Confused with whatever is happening, Casey threatens to fight, but Chase calms her down and takes the knife away from her. Next, everyone on the island gathers in one place and tries to recall who they are. Eventually, they find their names on the neck labels of their shirts. The group then tries to figure out how they ended up on the island. One of them rules out a plane crash or a ship incident, as all of them are in perfectly good condition. Everyone having amnesia at the same time is also impossible. Maybe they all boarded the same Disney cruise. You can't trust Mickey in 2022. After failing to find an answer, Chase goes around the island in search of clues. She is joined by the macho of the group, Brody, and a talkative guy, Donovan. The trio ends up finding different survival items, including a first aid kit buried under the spot where everyone was lying. Chase and Brody then decide to search for food and fresh water, while Donovan returns to the others to light a fire. After walking for hours through the jungle, Brody and Chase come across a freshwater source, a beautiful waterfall. In the heat of the moment, they also make out. Seconds later, Chase decides that the romance is enough for one day, but Brody craves more and tries to assert himself on her. Enraged, Chase pulls out her knife and threatens to stab him before running away. Elsewhere, Donovan and the others go for a swim in the sea, where they are soon surrounded by sharks. Everyone panics and rushes to the shore, but poor Donovan is bitten and taken away. After a while, Chase and Brody separately arrive at the camp. She accuses him of having bad intentions, but Brody denies the allegation. Before things could escalate, 2 sensible guys, Cooper and Moses, separate them. Like the Red Sea. They then reveal that a shark killed one of their friends. At night, everyone takes a nap, and Chase has a nightmare where she pulls a gun on an elderly woman. Soon, she wakes up in a cold sweat and decides to go for a walk. I gotta stop dreaming about beating up old people. A few meters ahead, she surprisingly comes across a badly wounded but alive Donovan. She immediately alerts everyone, and they carry him back to the camp. There is a trained nurse in the group named Blair, and she starts taking care of Donovan. Later, Brody suggests moving inland to find a better shelter, but Chase and the others feel that they should try and find a way out of the island. As everyone is discussing, the youngest members of the group, Mason and Hayden, reveal that they noticed a pattern earlier. It turns out that each of them were located exactly 39 steps away from one another when they first woke up on the island. On multiplying 39 with the number of people present on the island, i.e. 10, they walked 390 steps and found a signboard that says, "Find your way back." However, the others think that it's a nothing burger, more insane than Hurley's lottery numbers, they say, and return back to the camp. This frustrates Chase, and she smashes her shell in anger. Surprisingly, there is a digital key hidden inside it, which she doesn't notice. The next morning, Chase wakes up earlier than everyone and shockingly notices a tent boat in the sea. She immediately swims towards it, barely escaping the sharks. Inside, she finds multiple suitcases and a backpack with some bullets and a bunch of other items which reference the number 39. An elated Chase then paddles the tent back to shore and hides it. She also hides the suitcases separately, and it's revealed that one of them contains medicine while the other has a locked box. After a while, she joins the others at the camp and watches Casey leave with Brody in search of food. Once deep in the jungle, the two flirt and start making out. Later, they return to the camp and notice a massive storm approaching from the distance. Brody again insists on moving inland, and this leads to a physical altercation between him and Cooper. At last, when the group refuses to follow his orders, Brody leaves for the forest alone. In no time, the storm arrives, and Chase is forced to tell everyone about the tent, where they eventually spend the night. The next morning, after the skies clear, Chase ventures out and finally notices the digital key. She rushes to open the suitcase and finds a revolver inside. Later, the young girl Hayden notices a contrasting change in Casey's demeanor. After she went into the forest with Brody, she presses her for information, and Casey finally reveals that Brody mistreated her. Meanwhile, Chase and Cooper hike up a mountain to get a better look at the island. To their surprise, they come across a huge abandoned hotel with a functional freshwater fountain. Afterwards, they return to the camp, and she takes a shot at Brody again, which leads to another altercation. Fed up with all the torture, Brody decides to stay on his own. That night, Chase again dreams of pulling a gun on the same old woman from earlier. The next morning, everyone wakes up to Brody's dead body. He was killed by the same knife Chase had been carrying around. So, expectedly, they blame her for the murder, despite her best efforts to claim that she is innocent. When nothing works, Chase starts fighting back. It's clear that she is a trained fighter, but Cooper and the others eventually outnumber her and knock her unconscious. In the next scene, Chase wakes up to find herself in a room with a nurse. This naturally puzzles her, and she demands answers, but the nurse sedates her instead. Next, Chase wakes up in another room with a doctor beside her. He reveals that she is actually a prisoner, and that they are in a futuristic Texas correctional facility. Chase is then escorted to the prison warden, Mr. Wells' office. Confused and angry, she demands to know why she is in prison and why she was on an island before. Wells doesn't mention the reason for her incarceration, but reveals that the island is actually a computer simulation called Island. Whoa, that's clever. The 9 other people there are also imprisoned criminals. Wells further explains that the island is designed to test the criminals and change them for the better through the use of harsh techniques. Anyone who dies in the simulation dies in real life. How does that help anyone? This confuses Chase even more, and she assumes that everything is a lie. But Wells tells her that she can find out for herself when she is sent back to the simulation shortly. Later, she is presented before the members of the Rehabilitation Advisory Board. They again brief her that the program's aim is to give prisoners a second chance at life and see if they repeat their past behavioral patterns, unless they get bitten by a simulated shark and die. One of the advisory members feels that Chase has failed and she shouldn't be sent back to Island because of her self-serving and violent nature. At the halftime break, Wells confides in Chase that although he is in charge of conducting this rehabilitation program, he doesn't approve of it. He feels that it's a total waste of money trying to rehabilitate people who frankly don't deserve it. For instance, Brody is incarcerated for forcing himself onto others, but even inside, the rehabilitation program couldn't change him. Wells further reveals that the program is designed to kill anyone who kills others. He also confirms that Chase did in fact not kill Brody, and it was someone else. Before departing, Chase inquires about her recurring dream where she is pulling a gun on an older woman. Wells simply replies that it's a memory from her real life. Later, the advisory members take a secret vote and decide to send Chase back into the program. Before the preparations for it begin, one of the advisory members, Dr. Weiss, privately meets Chase and warns her that the warden is secretly manipulating the results of the simulation. She can't prove how, but she is sure of it. On her way to the doctor's room, Chase manages to escape and reaches the simulation room disguised as a worker. There, she witnesses the chamber where Cooper and the other prisoners have been kept in cryosleep. However, before Chase can investigate more, she is caught, and Warden Wells again sends her back into Island. Next, Chase wakes up inside the simulation, tied up by her fellow Islanders, who believe that she murdered Brody. She insists that she's innocent, and also tries to explain that they are actually inside a computer simulation. Chase further reveals that they are all incarcerated criminals, who have been sent off to this island to prove that they can change. No one believes her, but Cooper admits having a vague memory of talking to a warden who wears a cowboy hat. Suddenly, the young girl, Hayden, has a flashback and remembers the time that got her incarcerated. It turns out she brutally killed her husband, who she suspected of cheating on her. Meanwhile, Chase continues to insist that she's innocent, and even accuses one of them of killing Brody. This infuriates the others, and they call her a serial liar, accusing her of hiding things ever since they got to this island. As the group continues bickering, suddenly, 2 new Islanders show up. They introduce themselves as Bonnie and Clyde, and claim that they woke up on the other side of the island in an abandoned village. However, when Chase finds their accents strikingly similar to the warden's, she suspects that they have been sent to manipulate the group. As Cooper grills the new Islanders, the outspoken brat of the group, Taylor, remembers that Bonnie and Clyde are actually the names of a famous bank robber couple from the 1930s. Then, Chase points out that oddly, these two haven't said anything about the dead body of Brody, which any normal person would be horrified after seeing.